We need to pull some Holdo maneuvers.
This is where the fun begins.
And here we are. We're live with the Holdo maneuver. No Marc, no Michael this time. Instead, it's me, the Beef, and Allison here.
Hello. Yeah, we're taking over.
Yeah, it's a takeover.
Yeah, right. So, and we've just barely met, so it's like awkward podcast speed dating situation.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I hope this goes smoothly for everybody involved.
Or if it doesn't, I hope it's at least entertaining.
That's also I think the second best scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Allison, let's just get this awkward bandage off the hop. How do we know you?
Let's see. I used to be Empress of everything. No, just kidding. I have a YouTube channel called Retro Toy Princess, where I do the occasional history video on toy like the character history or toy lines. And I have a problem of buying old coloring books from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and then I color them in time lapse on screen. So yeah. And other things, but those are primarily where people are going to know me from.
Fair enough. I'm currently not on anything, but I've been a guest on here a few times. I've known Marc and Michael for a few years now, so it's quite nice that they allow me to share my Star Wars thoughts and opinions with the world. And but used to have a podcast, and in a kind of spot where I'm revamping it right now.
What was your podcast?
It was Rant to the Future, where we rant in the present and you listen to it in the future, and we talk about like geeky things. Marc was on it for an episode where we talked about mental health and the Ted Lasso show.
Oh, two things he's passionate about in different ways.
Absolutely. So
I have to ask really quickly though, the Beef, how did you get the name?
My last name sounds like the word jerky, and so beef jerky, then it just became the Beef.
The Beef. I was like ready to meet like one of those morning talk show hosts. Like,
you say that? I have hosted those.
Allison Troy and the Beef this morning on your walk.
Yeah. That's been my last 2 years with being back in school for digital communications and media. So ended up having a radio show where I was the Beef. With your morning roundup and afternoon ranch.
There we go. So what's the weather like, the Beef?
The weather right now is nice and sunny right where I am, keeping up above 20 degrees Celsius.
Excellent. Oh, Celsius. Fancy. Yep. It's Fahrenheit here.
So we got Celsius up here in Quebexico. So
Canadian, I see.
Yeah.
Wow. Here it's a lovely 52 degrees Fahrenheit in the Pacific Northwest. It's cloudy with a chance of rain, and in the morning there could be fog. So there you go.
There you go.
All right, so we've gotten the weather out of the way.
Yeah.
Tell everyone to go down to Crazy Max's and buy a car. His prices are crazy, and then we're set, so we should probably get started now.
Yeah, so this is season 2 of Andor we're talking about. We're talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6. Ever Been to Ghorman is episode 4's title. Episode 5 is I Have Friends Everywhere, and episode 6 What a festive evening. So let's give the breakdown here. Episode 4, Cassian and Bix Operation. 1 year after the events from Minu Rao. I'm terrible with names. Cassian and Bix are working as operatives for Luthen and operating under the radar of Coruscant. Cassian has evolved into more tactical, mission-focused figure, while Bix struggles with engineering trauma or enduring trauma from the past. Cyrus's new role. Hit that like everyone. Yeah. Thanks, Marc, for reminding everybody to hit the like button right now. Cyrus's role, Cyrus Karn, now working under Deidre and Protagas, is sent to Ghorman to infiltrate the rebel movement there, pretending to be sympathetic to their cause. His loyalty to the Empire and his personal sense of duty drives him to subterfuge. Lutheran's strategy became more apparent as he sends Cassian to Ghorman to assess the rebels. His ability to manipulate and control various factions reveal how deeply entrenched his operations are, and Mon Mothma's struggles. Mon Mothma faces increasing difficulty as she tries to rally support against the ISB bill that would grant the Empire sweeping powers. This subplot reflects her position as senator trying to subtly undermine the imperial power. So, like, lots of things happened in this first episode, uh, for our what we're talking about. I actually really enjoyed seeing like Cassian go in there for Luthen, and just seeing him take on like the role in that party, and having to just like assess everything for them. Like, I think throughout the 3 episodes, there's a point where they think they have caught somebody, and I'm just like, how would you even tell, because of the way that culture is too? Oh, I think you are muted, Allison, right now.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird that they're so passive because, and they've reintroduced it through these episodes, but in the Legacy, pre-Disney expanded universe, there was the Ghorman massacre, which is where Tarkin landed his ship on them because they refused to move during protest, and it's very much they've brought that back in.
Oh yeah, they've definitely really established that being part of like the Ghorman culture, and having it be like they don't move away.
Yes,
They're very stuck in that tradition,
and
and
so it's really odd that that they were so like oddly they're so passive, yet at the same time they were willing to, I guess, passively be crushed by Tarkin
yeah.
as an act of resistance. So it's, for me, what's interesting, because there's a lot of action in these, and a lot of political intrigue, and a lot of like big moves being made in these episodes. But it was really interesting that sort of the backbone of what's going on in Ghorman is this very passive action of them allowing themselves to be crushed for the cause of their resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there's a really nice juxtaposition there. It's like this was how they resisted, and it's technically a very violent end, but a very non-violent action that leads to violence.
Yeah.
And yet throughout the rest of the series, we have all these very violent actions being done that are sort of in the name of leading to peace. So it's like the fact that it's all sort of structured around Ghorman, where it's like peaceful resistance leads to violent death, and we're sort of seeing the flip side of that equation for everything else going on. Like, it just, to me, it's really interesting. I'm really kind of glad they brought back the Ghorman massacre to the continuity in that capacity, because they did rewrite it for Rebels.
No, and I feel like there has to then be some kind of bridging between those two versions of the Ghorman massacre is going to end up where one was like a precursor to setting up the other, basically. But no, it's interesting. We're getting a lot of, you're understanding why too that they would be there, kind of thing, and how like they would just culturally fall into that resistance of through kind of not moving, not being passive, in a way to be actively resisting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Sort of over. I mean, there's so much going on here, but one of the things I keep running into with Andor is sort of, Star Wars, the traditional Star Wars, the original trilogy that most of us that I grew up with, and most people are used to,
Mm-hmm.
New Hope, Empire, Return of the Jedi. It's a very black and white battle, right?
Yeah.
Good versus evil. The prequels get, introduce some grayness, but at the end of the day, it's still very black and white. Sequels, again, a very black and white conflict. And especially and Rebels also is fairly black and white, but also that's, like sort of designed to appeal to both kid audiences and adult audiences. Whereas this is very gray.
Rebels, I would say, especially as you watch going through, ends up giving a little bit more gray at times. And that can also be said for Clone Wars too, as you watch like Ahsoka's journey through it.
Yeah.
But this one is it's very gray. It's very, without necessarily like adult themes, it is a very adult show.
Yeah.
Because you have to be engaged with it. You have to be watching this and following what's going on. It's not something as much as you can like put passively on in the background and come back to it. It's not as bang bang, constant adventure and movement and excitement that a lot of like, let's say like Star Wars tends to be a lot of, outside of what little politics that they introduced in the prequels. Compared to something like this, where it's heavily based on the politics, it's heavily based around the character drama and the interconnectivity of everybody. And it feels like almost a Star Wars-esque type of attempt at a Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Well, and we're also seeing things like PTSD and what is the actual psychological impact of having to fight the corruption, and the oppression of the Empire. Like, it's not, I mean, sort of the closest, like in A New Hope, it's like Luke goes home and the stormtroopers have killed Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. He looks sad, and then he's like, let's go, adventure. Alderaan blows up and Leia, has that moment, but then after that, it's very much, she's back to being sort of sassy, take charge. At the end, they arrive on Yavin and she's like, we have no time for our sorrows. It's like the next battle. Obi-Wan dies, and although Luke's sad, like, it's very brief and fleeting. It's all about sort of the adventure of it, the hero's journey of it, with not as much, whereas this is very much digging down into what the actual cost of having to fight oppression is, and having to go to war with, a corrupt government. So it's really interesting that, there are times where I personally am like, this, not in sort of the terrible way people say it. It's like, but there are times where I'm like, this is Star Wars? Like this, like feels really, not in a bad way. It feels really different and really textured.
With that trauma and PTSD, as well as the cost of rebellion, it makes me think too about how in these episodes we see like Saw Gerrera's story, and how when he talks about what those fumes do and how they feel on the skin, and how it reminds him of his sister.
Yeah.
It just like makes you think too how like to him being a survivor, he wasn't the one that should have been there. He's not the revolutionary. That would have been his sister who should have been there, that we saw, pass in the Clone Wars and stuff. So it makes you think then, like, how his asthma and his breathing problems ended up becoming because he's working through or really not working through that trauma and PTSD. And it's just another extra cost to this rebellion.
Well, it's like a type of an addiction. It's like a coping thing where it's
Yeah.
like, sort of, and the way that we understand sort of addiction as part of it initially is to numb yourself.
Oh,
And then you get so
absolutely.
wrapped up in it, you're sort of removed from whatever the root cause, as you struggle with an addiction, you're really removed from the root cause. So it's really, and Forrest Whitaker is one of those actors who's very tremendous,
Oh yeah.
in the scope of what he can do. And it's not in a bad, I'm not saying this in a bad way. It's just really interesting that it finally took Star Wars for him to like get, like he's done a lot of theater to my understanding. And of course, like you deliver there, but that's also for an audience that it's not recorded. We don't get to see it. If you're not in the audience, you don't benefit from that performance. Um, and most of his film roles have been, even the good ones, have been very smaller roles for the most part, like character parts. And even though this is still technically a character role, it's a supporting character. He's really getting this really like some really meaty scenes, like his that monologue where he's talking about his sister and the fumes and stuff. It's just so like like both touching. It's dramatic. It's really good. Like it was really it makes me really sad that it's taken Star Wars from most audience to get something from Forrest Whitaker that really shows his true range and his true talent.
No, absolutely. I've been a big fan of his since I remember seeing him in a few episodes of ER
Yeah,
back when that was a thing. That's where I got introduced to his work, and he's just been a phenomenal dramatic actor.
yeah.
And he doesn't pull back anything here. He
Mm-mm.
gives everything into doing these, like, Star Wars is not just
Yeah,
it's not like it's not just a job. He's still giving
yeah.
100%, you know?
When he's treating it as if it's Oscar material, like he's not treating it
Absolutely.
like this is a space opera. I mean, no offense to Samuel L. Jackson, but like Samuel L. Jackson did Star Wars because it's a great adventure, it's fun, and that's what he brought to. And again, like Mace Windu is one of the great Star Wars characters, and there's some great work with that character, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like Samuel L. Jackson can sort of bring it, and it's like he never got sort of material to bring it. Like it's interesting that like you don't get a lot of serious actors who end up doing Star Wars, and it's like when you
No.
get them, I don't know. I feel like Andor too has really given a lot of really good actors. Like the entire cast is magnificent, in my humble opinion.
No, I completely agree with you there. I feel like each actor knows how to really bring out what they need out of the characters that they're going into, and they have a great vision of what is going on for their characters, as well as, like, the director's vision just seems to have, like, a knows what he wants to be telling with the story for it, you know?
Oh yeah, no, like I don't know. It's really odd, um, in a good way, just how deep Andor gets into Star Wars. Like
Yeah.
the Mandalorian's really good, but it doesn't ever really get that deep. And
No.
it's very Star Wars deep, and it's
No.
just like it really feels like I, it would be very difficult, but also you could sort of just Andor could in some ways be its own thing without Star Wars on it. You'd obviously have to change a tremendous amount of what you call things and the look of things, but
Yeah.
I think the basic story and the basic structure of excuse me, the structure of it you could easily make it something else and it would still hit as hard because it's the story itself is just really strong.
100% agree with that. I mean, I think you could uh take this and put it into any setting. You could make it a World War II series if you wanted to. You could make it something now, even, but like, and that's what I think also really comes out of the whole political intrigue of it, with all the different you have your subplots, you have your Mon Mothma's focus, and you have Lutherans, and everybody else is just those little things. Everybody's moving towards each other in different ways, and it's just seeing how that counterpoints each other too, between where we get the political like side of things to the tactical and the military, and it just all plays to that real real feeling of a story.
Oh yeah, and it's sort of again with Mon Mothma, like basically all of Andor, but like Return of the Jedi, she's blinking, you miss her. Like many Bothans died, and then she's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, and even in like Revenge of the Sith, she comes back, and it's again blink and you miss her. Especially after they cut most of the scenes that she was in. And so Rogue One, she comes on for a little bit, has a few moments, but it's not. And it's just the story arc that she's gotten through Andor is just, again, it's taking this little bit character, an official Star Wars. She had quite a bit more in the old expanded universe, but just sort of the depths that we're getting with Mon Mothma and the struggle that she's facing as somebody who's inherently peaceful and believes in democratic processes as she tries to get people, like all these people who are throwing all these parties and like these dinners and like sort of the opulence that they're all sort of reveling in, rather than actually governing fairly and in a good way. It's really interesting watching sort of that play out as she basically realizes the Senate and all of the democracy that she so believes in and that she's been working in for, at this point, several decades is done.
absolutely. Well, and it just also shows that juxtaposition of what the political side and like that, her stature as a senator and her act of rebellion within it, versus the ground level and getting dirty and you're getting your hands dirty side, where like Andor is. um it just also is really good to see that juxtaposition on screen constantly, especially the way they interweave the story and cutting between these subplots all the time. You have decadence, you have um that like opulence, like you said, but then you can also cut to the sterility of what is the empire itself, to the down and dirty stuff too, of plotting the rebellions, of being in those actions that you're going to be like, you can feel everything and see that like all different sides.
Yeah, and it feels like in this chunk of episodes, more so than some of the previous ones, it feels like Mon Mothma is finally starting to truly understand like how deep her rebellion and her resistance is, that it's not going to be sort of the quiet behind the scenes like diplomatic situation that it feels like even last season she was still really focused on diplomacy, like that. Even as deep as she got in season one, it still felt like she thought we might be able to solve this. And it's like, I really feel there are times where her despair in these episodes is really clear as she further understands diplomacy is probably not, that it's going to have to move into rebellion. I mean, we sort of see her finally accepting that to a degree in Rogue One, but
Yeah.
it really feels like she's, the actress is getting to play that as Mon Mothma realizes it's not going to be bloodless, and she's not going to have clean hands coming out of this.
No.
She's not going to be able to keep her hands clean to liberate the galaxy from the Empire. And it's been really interesting watching her get to play that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that kind of leads us into more other sides of some of the questions that Marc and Michael had us set up with here. But so how do you feel that where Cassian becomes more like Luthen here, or is he trying to distance himself from those methods?
I feel like, I mean, in Rogue One, Cassian feels very jaded and very much like he's not idealistic. Like, and it's what I liked about Rogue One is you're not getting idealistic rebels to a degree, and sort of through the process of it, Jyn Erso kind of becomes idealistic in the name of fixing her father's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of you see at the end Cassian sort of becoming hopeful again and realizing, that it's like here he's really slowly but surely becoming sort of that cold-blooded, the cause is all that he starts Rogue One with. And it's like, despite all of his concerns, all of his sort of, he's feels very much like at times he's trying to protect Bix. But at the same time, he's slowly but surely realizing that he's just like becoming this machine almost. It's like he's becoming colder, more unfeeling. It's really interesting watching that shift to who we meet in Rogue One.
He's in survival mode, maybe not for himself, but for Bix as well, doing what he needs to kind of protect her, or protect Bix, and then as well as do what he needs to for his role within the rebellion. And he's become jaded because he's been in this now for so long. He's been through all of season 1, right? And that really had effects on him.
Well, and to a degree, sort of what in season 1, sort of what pushed him really was, sort of the question about the fate of his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's completely, I don't think, if I'm remembering correctly, she hasn't even been mentioned this season. And toward the end of last season, she was almost completely forgotten as part of his motivation.
Yeah.
And that's part of as he gets deeper into the cause and more devoted to the idea of rebellion and what he has to do for rebellion, he's becoming disconnected, in my opinion, from what actually originally pushed him into rebellion.
No, I completely agree with that. So speaking though, like with the motivations and everything else that we've talked about, like we have seen quite the human cost of rebellion, and talked about that, especially with like the Saw Gerrera part, and like even Cassian's humanity within himself. But with that, do you think too, like, did Vel Cinta's death have like significance to that cost as well, when we're looking at how we're seeing that play out throughout the storytelling and for this season?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what's interesting to me is like, I mean, Luthen's a really cool character, but I also feel like we never get a full read on him.
Mm-hmm.
Even in season 1, I could never, like, he's at times a cold strategist. At other times, he comes across as having compassion. There's the whole thing where they're laughing about potentially like going in and taking care of Krennic, which like they're laughing like it's this great joke or whatever. So it's very interesting because I feel like the deeper we've gotten into the season, the less I feel like I understand him. He feels less not less human, but he feels less personable isn't the right word, but I don't can't quite put my hand on my hand like on the exact word I want. It feels, but it's like he's becoming, I guess, less human is the best, less humane. I think that's
Yeah.
better. Like he's less. He's in a different way though than Cassian, whereas Cassian's like push to become more machine-like feels much more humane in some ways. Like yes,
Mhm.
he's becoming more violent. Yes, but it doesn't feel like he's lost sight of this is about liberation and ending oppression. Whereas Luthen, with all of the machinations, all of the plots, all of the intrigue, it almost feels like to a degree he's enjoying sort of the spy caper of it and
Absolutely.
getting wrapped up in how finger quote how fun it is. Like it's exciting and dramatic and
I also think to a degree that he's lost his perspective of what the cost is of this rebellion. Like he's just like where he's lost that humanity kind of aspect of, or not humanity, but like humaneness of it, where like we were saying, how you're saying too with Cassian, and how he's more robotic, but it almost seems more humane because he's still attached to what all the cost is here. He might be willing to do what he needs to, but Luthen just is ready to throw what he needs to throw at it while he's busy doing his thing from the that high position, you know and you learn, it feels like he's lost that sight and perspective of what like the actual tolls of the rebellion is. And then
no,
we have comments here saying that
yeah.
not sure Luthen is even the brains of that operation anymore, which I can kind of see.
Well, and maybe that's kind of part of the overall thing is that he's not the brains of the operation because he's getting really caught up in it.
Hmm.
So it's like you're not really, if you're not thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead, you're not thinking about what the actual end goal is or what the actual reason that you're fighting is. If it becomes about the intrigue of it, you become more dangerous, to my opinion, you become more dangerous to your cause because you're no longer, the scope of it, the weight of it, the actual impact of it is lost while you're running around playing I don't know what the James Bond equivalent is in Star Wars, but you're running around, like playing spy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I can definitely see that being the case too. Think that we're just got one more notey kind of thing here with uh what was what do the political dynamics between Mon Mothma and Krennic's reveal about the Empire's internal power struggles? Like the quiet resistance versus ambition both play pivotal roles to this landscape. How does their interactions at the investiture party highlight that Empire's corruption and Ma's growing defiance?
Well, I mean, well, one, they have that great sort of debate
Hmm.
where it's really
Which,
clear he's power hungry. He's all about people bowing to his power. Typical, um,
but which is like a great also on screen
oh yeah,
like interaction where again like stuff is happening, but even though it's a conversation,
right.
and but you feel those tensions into it.
Yeah, and it's Krennic is very he's the kind of guy who wants to build a Death Star to help blow up planets when they don't fall in line. Whereas Mon Mothma is diplomacy, discussion. So it's just really interesting. And again, she's sort of having to let go of some of that, so that you can get back to it. Whereas Krennic, to him, that's never going to be an option. It's always going to be, crush them, kiss the boot, whoever is in power rules. And of course,
No. It feels also very timely, though, with that two dynamics, especially the way things are in the world right now.
Yeah, it feels like one of my thoughts during that conversation between them is like, this is very much fiction sort of mirroring reality in a lot of ways right now, because those conversations are happening multiple, not just in the US, not just in Canada, but everywhere right now. So it's really interesting. This is the first time I feel like we've gotten a Star Wars where it's, any Star Wars content where it's just really precisely of the moment in that way. Because infamously Lucas did the first three, the first movie came about him wanting to, after sort of the disillusionment of people post-Vietnam, post-Watergate, etc. He was wanting to create some new mythology and put a new hope into the world. So it's really interesting that sort of where he started, what his original goal is, and that as over the last 50 years, as the world has sort of shifted away from that time, that Star Wars is reflecting sort of where we're at rather than where he wanted us to go, I guess. So it's really interesting. Like, you could really, like, especially with the mom, it's like she's very much watching, Good Morning Coruscant, and sort of the propaganda news, and like it's really interesting to sort of
that distraction of entertainment with instead of what's going on with the actual politics of everything.
Yeah, it's like who wore what, and who did you see, and oh my goodness, like the scandal of like her backlash or whatever it was. It's like that was the focus rather than the actual. What did they vote for? Like, like, are they representing their home planet well? It's just been really interesting to watch that.
Yeah. No, that was a very interesting I very much find it intriguing watching that like play out on Coruscant and how that mirrors things now with our present situation, as well as, like you said, it's very much of its time.
Yeah.
But I think, is there anything else that you want to cover on this episode? Or episodes?
Yeah, let me take a look. I think we've hit everything in my notes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've talked so really quick. Let's talk about what everyone's wearing in the Senate. And I think I mentioned, did I mention this before? Yeah, I did before we went live. Jimmy Smits being missing is weird to me, but I get it. I would rather them make it than not have the character, or like CGI him in. And Benjamin Bratt is, if you're gonna replace Jimmy Smits, thankfully, Benjamin Bratt was available. Where's it at? So I liked that we get. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say it was a shock seeing that character change up and be like, oh.
And we didn't even get sort of the daytime General Hospital Days of Our Lives. The character of Bail Organa will now be played by. So it threw me for a second, but then once I sort of went with it, it was fine.
And finding out too that there's just like a conflict of schedules and
it wasn't
stuff too. It's not like it's a purposeful, but it's it is what it is, but like Benjamin Bratt falls into that role quite well.
Yeah, he did really well with it. Yeah, especially being that at this point, Jimmy Smits has played that character for 20 years now.
Yeah.
Actually longer, because he first debuted in Attack of the Clones, so 2020, so like 23 years now, and obviously he was back last season, the first season of Andor, so, and then he was in the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, in the
I think
Kenobi
he was
show.
in Andor season 1, wasn't he? If not, he was definitely on the I almost called it the Baby Leia show, but Obi-Wan. Let's see. That was weird, but actually, it didn't detract once I just accepted that's how it was.
Yeah.
I like that we got Dakwar back from like the sequels, where the Resistance was based in the first sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool that we saw it, and that's where Saw Gerrera is. Sort of based on what the Resistance is in the sequel trilogy. It was kind of a nice statement as to like, this is, the rebellion sort of started here, the Resistance is here in their early formation.
I also really liked Saw saying how, we won't be back here, but then the Resistance is back there. That kind of irony of that.
Right, like 50 years later or whatever, 30,
Yeah.
40, 50 years later, they're back there. The time jumps in the season have kind of thrown me a little bit. Just because I'm not used to, like, generally in Star Wars, it's like, like Empire Strikes Back obviously takes place over weeks, possibly even months. But it's not structured in a way where you're told, like, 3 months later, they finally get to Bespin, or, like, Luke has been training with Yoda for, 7.5 months or whatever. So, like, the actual year points at first kind of threw me, but then because we're at a point where time is so important to the actual, like, the Death Star itself and the Battle of Yavin, it made sense that they're doing it.
No, absolutely. And I think that was something I remember talking about with Marc and Mike last when we wrapped up and did our whole thoughts of the whole series for season 1. And that was just all like, that time plays an interesting role, and how it does feel kind of separate. Like, it's also a good way though of feeling how they separate the arcs.
Yeah,
that they do, because it is, as much as there's one overarching story, there's also this anthology way of watching the show, where it breaks down into 3 episodes for some part stories, then another like 4 episodes for another story arc, kind of hit those beats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else did I have? Because I'm gonna make sure we cover it so that we're doing our best. I have a couple notes about the sets are overall amazing. The grocery store, the Ghorman memorial area, and the various apartments in Coruscant. The grocery store particularly to me was really cool. I felt like, like, it was very nicely world built without feeling too over the top. You've got plastic bags with food in it, so it's very relatable as like they're in a grocery store, without going completely. Some sci-fi like wants to like be really not of Earth, so it was a really nice. To me, it felt like sort of like 70s Star Wars and early 80s, where the blue milk is in a container that looks like some Tupperware that your mom has, or Amber's jacket looks like something you could have bought at at Woolworths or whatever. So I liked, it's alien, it's Star Wars, but it's also very Earth-like.
Well, even just the little touches of like the butter being made out of that's blue. That's
Yeah,
so it's because it's made out of the same blue milk that you assume Luke was drinking or
yeah.
something like that, you know?
But it's so recognizable as like butter. So it's like,
Yeah.
so it's just, to me, that kind of world building is really nice because world building to me is far more, it feels less fake when you can relay it, or, easily related to something that does exist without it being like, look, it's our blue butter. It's just, it's there, it's blue, it's butter.
Also, not quite on the same topic, but along that same line of like recognizing something as being something, but also still being kind of different, and it's fitting into that sci-fi. French people exist now in Star Wars,
Right?
which is wild to think, but you know, I've always enjoyed when they just like have it being somebody talking a different language, and you're just like, oh yeah, no, that I just completely understand and respond in English, with Han and
Right.
Chewie kind of thing. But so yeah, it's a nice touch though. It makes Ghorman feel like
Mm.
that European old world kind of feel that it should have,
Well, and
or
it
that.
also, it feels very much like those old sort of French resistance movies you used to see,
Oh
like
yeah.
from like the world set in World War II, and like it has that vibe to it, which of course is appropriate because George Lucas, like definitely used parts of World War II as an inspiration for Star Wars.
Hmm.
So I like, like those little touches and how everything is designed. The Gormans look like Gormans. They don't look like the people on Coruscant. They don't look like they're from Alderaan. It's like there's a very unique look.
There's
And
a
it
distinct
is
culture.
very Paris, but at the same time it kind of works because again it's that real worldness to it while still being Star Wars.
It's like France and Milan had a baby, and
Yeah, with just a little alien technology to remind you it's Star Wars.
yeah.
Let's see. I looked this up because I'm a nerd. This is set after Ezra's speech, his radio speech in the first season of Rebels.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was cool. But also, again, this is sort of the tonal difference between Rebels and Andor. It also felt like, even though stuff is happening concurrently, it also feels like Rebels should happen after this. So, like, I am having a little bit of a difficult time reconciling the Rebels timeline as happening concurrently with Andor, but I know it does. It's just, I think, because the tones are so different.
Which I get. I feel
Yeah.
like for me, that comes down to also that though they're both kind of a front line, it's a different approach to that front line. And again, we're looking at it from something with like subterfuge and more adult tasks instead of like you get a little bit more thrown into fun Jedi adventures with rebels.
Yeah. Also, Rebels feels way more like it's leading into A New Hope.
Hmm.
Whereas my note after that was, but this is like season 3. I'm sorry, this is like the lead up to Rogue One, whereas Rogue One is, even though it leads right into Star Wars, is also very dark. And I just put it feels like once all of the Andor seasons are done, I'm pretty sure like this is the last one, but depending on where it ends, there could be room for season 3.
I
But
think I remember them
regardless,
saying that it was supposed to be 2 seasons of
okay,
a
so
story.
then, which with the time jumps is easy for them to accomplish with 12 episodes, but it does feel like once the season is over, once the Andor show is over, Rogue One is gonna retroactively feel like the finale of the Andor season, like a very
Hmm.
special episode of Andor to wrap everything up.
No. 100% with that.
And that was all the notes I had that were different than what we've already talked about. So
Yeah. Well, I think that puts us at just about 50 minutes here now.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good time that we can call her. I'd like to thank everybody that showed up into the audience and said hi, and make sure that you guys hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Allison, where can people find you?
I am on YouTube at Retro Toy Princess. Just type it in and it'll probably pull up some Star Wars and some coloring videos. That's the right place. Come check it out. I dropped some Return of the Jedi coloring pages today for you to watch. So,
Nice.
and the people can't find you anywhere just yet, right?
Right. You can find my miniature painting on Instagram at Beef Miniature Gaming, but other than that, there's not a whole lot else for finding me right now.
Painting miniatures, that's not nothing. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, go check it out. Go check out go check out the beef, y'all.
Yeah, there we go. Go check out the beef.
Sorry.
Make sure to also check out Allison Retro Toy Princess. Give them a like and subscribe if you haven't already, That's it for this episode of the Holdo Maneuver. Thank you everybody for joining us. It was fun to do this little takeover.
Yeah.
I guess peace out, everyone.
May the force be with you.